Welcome to episode 232 of the Fabulously Keto podcast, and we welcome back Angela Stanton for another fascinating and eye-opening conversation. This time, diving deep into the importance of protein, especially for women. Welcome, Angela, back to the Fabulously Keto podcast. It's fabulous to have you back with us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me again. It is awesome to be present.
So for the listeners, we're doing this as part of the Fabulously Me, the Thrive Tribe membership. So we have with us online also some of the members that can make it today, and they're going to get a chance to talk to you privately once we finish recording this podcast. And one of the reasons I reached out to you again is because we had a conversation. It started on Facebook and we moved it offline onto email about the amounts of protein. And I was really interested to hear more about your high protein approach. So I asked you to come back and speak to the group, and we'd do a podcast as well.
Awesome. That's really exciting. And yes, we do need a lot more protein, particularly women. So if you're a man, you can plug your ears, but for women, yes, much more protein.
So we always start with, where in the world are you?
Southern California, just awaiting the atmospheric river. Hopefully, we're going to get some more rain. That's where I am. What about you?
So I am just outside London, northeast of London. For anybody that knows Stansted Airport, I'm about half an hour from Stansted Airport. And yeah, I've just got back actually from France. So I've been skiing for a week.
Oh, I'd like to go there.
Yeah. So one of the things that caught my attention was I think what happened was I said I was doing this low calorie 3 days a week with low fat, and you came back and said you need a lot more protein, and I said, okay, I'm 5'3" and I weigh 175 pounds, let's say, approximately, a bit more after my week away. How much protein do I need? And you came back and said something like 261 to 285 grams. And I just thought, it just blew my mind, really. So maybe you could just explain a bit about that and why you think we need so much.
Okay, sure. So there are many views on this, of course, but so here's my view and my experience. And I have to front this with the notion that I used to eat the standard American diet, which is quite low in protein. It's like 50 grams a day or so, max, basically, total, that they recommend for women. But over time, once I quit the standard American diet and moved to first a ketogenic, then the carnivore, low carb, high fat, and carnivore, and sort of kind of mix it now, I discovered that I started this when I was in my early 60s, 10 years ago, right? I'm now in my early 70s. I am actually stronger today, and I'm a lot younger looking and better looking than I was in my 60s. I said, okay, how did that happen? And so I also, of course, some of you know, I have a migraine group, and I currently have a little over 18,000 members. So over the years, the group itself is over 10 years old. And so over the years, I've had probably a total of about 25, 30,000, mostly women. There are some children and some men, but it's mostly women in there. And they all have the same experience. They all go on the high protein diet. And of course, with all the different advices of the different famous people, the YouTubers tell you to do this, to do that. And so you have to sort of kind of find your own way of which way you're going, of what fits you. And so I started with me. And then I looked at what happens to other people, women in my group. And I thought, wow, yes, indeed, it's correct. So when we say that we need more protein, and particularly for women, you have to understand what protein is and what it does. And so very few people actually understand what it is and what it does. And also there is very little understanding in protein from plants versus animal products. And so there's so much confusion in the field that is, and of course, everybody believes somebody, but who that is may or may not have any value. And we can't tell because everybody gets to be well known in the field of the internet. And so it took me several years of reading a ton of books, reading a lot of the chemistry and the physiology and a lot of physics, nuclear physics, to actually understand how these molecules from protein from plants versus animal, protein versus carbs versus fat, what actually happens in our body, and what are the physics limitations. And very few people actually discuss physics, which originally I was going to become a mathematician, but an earthquake disrupted that. So I was borderline physics and mathematics at the beginning. And I got my degree undergraduate in mathematics, but I was going to go to my PhD in math, but they had to change the earthquake destroyed my home and I moved. And so I am very, very tight to physics. So to understand things at the level of physics is a priority for me. And if I can't explain how the physics works, then it doesn't work. And so what I discovered is, first of all, over 40% of our bones is actually protein. I mean, you know, they tell you to strengthen your bones by eating calcium and do this and that. But what is calcium? It's a powder, for crying out loud. I mean, what happens with calcium if you take it? Nothing. It's going to collapse. It's a dust pile, right? It's not something that you can just take and it's going to automatically become bone. So then I tell you, well, then take vitamin D and take K2 and take vitamin C, and these are going to together going to build both. I said, no, D is primarily a lipid, right? D3. C is vitamin C, and K2 is again a lipid-like molecule. I said, where is the structure that's going to create your bones? And then you study further and you discover, wow, you actually have a protein base onto which is a scaffolding. So think of it as a building scaffolding. Before the building is built, you put up all the main, you know, weight-bearing walls. And the weight-bearing walls of our bones are made of protein. And they're sticky. And so what happens is when you eat calcium, then the calcium can stick to it with the help of vitamin D, vitamin C, K, whatever else. But your primary bone material is protein. And so if you don't eat enough protein, and this is a problem that I had to come to understand, well, what is enough protein? If you don't eat enough protein, you're going to lose your bones. It's just as simple as that. You can eat as much calcium as you want. It's just not going to help you because there won't be any scaffolding to adhere to build up your bones. And so when you're looking at the protein itself, well, how does the protein get in to become a scaffolding inside your bones, right? So you eat your protein, be it meat and plant. At this point, let's just keep it as protein. What's going to happen to that protein? So protein has to be what's called synthesized. And so protein synthesis, most people think about as growing your muscles, right? But actually, no, that's just one of gazillions of roles of protein synthesis. So if you go back to the level of DNA, which we can get deeper into if you want to, the entire code in our DNA in every single cell is how to create protein, our protein, which we have thousands of. There are only 20 amino acids out there, but there are thousands of protein in our body that are created by the DNA from the amino acids that we eat. But we can't just create protein every minute of the day. It's an extremely costly, expensive exercise for our body to create it. And it requires all of the raw materials. In other words, it won't start protein synthesis unless you have all the material ready for you and available to actually create what it wants to create. And so there are two factors in this of when protein synthesis will start, and there are some limitations. One of the factors is that, first of all, you have to eat a huge amount of protein at once, a bolus amount, so that there's going to be a signal coming. I ate enough. You can start protein synthesis. This signal is coming from leucine. Leucine is a branched chain amino acid that I think everybody has heard of, but we never really understand how it really works and what it does. So everybody has a leucine threshold. And the leucine threshold is the minimum amount of leucine required for the leucine to say, I'm here, present, let's start, okay? But if you just pile in leucine, it can signal till the cows come home and nothing is going to happen because there's not enough support behind to actually start the protein synthesis. So there are alternate processes as well that look to see how much protein you have, and not just protein, because you need to have fat and you need to have the right environment. Like you cannot be running a marathon while you're running a marathon, no matter how much protein you have, it's not going to start protein synthesis because you have a priority of just surviving that marathon. And so you have to have a whole different kind of caveats to protein synthesis. And these are primarily, for example, gender is not important. Male and female, they'll have the same exact leucine thresholds. But what it matters is your age and your physical activity. So if you're, say, 20 years old and you eat, I'm going to say something stupid, a bowl of rice, which barely has any protein, but you ate that bowl of rice, it doesn't matter. Your body is going to grab whatever protein is in it and is going to convert it into protein, because at that age, every gram of protein you ate, wherever form it's coming in from, your leucine threshold is 0. You will just build protein and grow. But as you get older, this is going to change. So from adulthood, which typically happens in the late 20s, early 30s, a fully internally adulthood. I don't mean just looking adult, but like your body is internally adult. The brain ends up developing at age 32 for women and 34 or 5 for men. So we're talking about late age. So at about that age, when you completely stopped all development, your leucine threshold will settle at about 3 grams. And so that means that this is your startup leucine threshold as an adult. So you need to eat at least as much protein from animal products, by the way. So I'm going to talk about this in a minute later. You need to eat at least 3 grams of leucine in a bolus amount of protein, complete protein, all amino acids together with a meal, with fat. You don't need carbs, but you need the fat to start protein synthesis. But depending upon what you do and depending upon of how physically active and healthy you are, this may or may not start or may not go on for long enough time. And so you have a limitation, what I call protein synthesis maximum, and that goes by the age and physical activity and health of the person. And so the younger you are, as far as your body is concerned, like I'm 72, but I'm physically active or weight lift, and other than being sick right now and being on medication, I'm normally a very healthy person. And so for me, my leucine threshold is not 3, it's about 4.5. But for somebody my age who is not at all physically active and not at all eating the standard, the low carb mode of eating, by eating less healthy or eating plants, the leucine threshold may be much higher, maybe too high. You may not ever be able to eat enough protein to reach it. So the goal is to find out what your leucine threshold is. And then once you started protein synthesis, how much you can synthesize. So the protein synthesis doesn't just grow muscles. It is for every single cell in your body. So if you look at some of your cells, some of the shortest living cells in your body are your gut cells. So every 2 to 4 days, depending upon whether it's a stomach or intestine or a colon, every 2 to 4 days, old cells are going to be trashed and new cells going to replace it. These require protein synthesis. Your skin cells, they live for 3 to 4 months and are replaced. Every single cell in your body, except for your brain cells, is basically replaced in your body regularly. So some of the cells may take a year to, I think that bone cells may be taking about a year to replace, but everything gets to be replaced. So within a certain number of years, basically you're completely anew. And so you need to have protein synthesis ongoing all the time. And so how much protein you need to eat is dependent upon who you are and how healthy you are and at what stage of your life you're in. And so to meet this minimum protein requirement is the problem. And so no amount of American guidelines or whatever dietary guidelines you look at will offer you the proper amount of protein you need to eat. And if you're not eating a bolus amount of protein, but say you have a day of eating only twice a day like I do, and say one meal, I say, well, I don't feel like eating any meat now, but I'm going to make up for it in the next meal. You can't. So it's better for you to make a big protein meal for each meal, because then you can start protein synthesis and maybe you finish by the time you get to your next meal, maybe not, but then more protein coming in, you can continue. But if you're just eating less protein, you will never start protein synthesis. And that's the problem with them becoming a little bit weakly looking, your weekend, you're too weakly looking and your I can't come up with a word that we use, that we basically they become very frail looking, even if you're not, but we look frail.
Yeah.
And there's no recovery from that.
And we see nowadays with lots of people breaking bones, even at a
Right,
younger age.
right,
Um,
exactly.
so I was away when I was away skiing last week. One of the men, he on the first day he broke his kneecap. And I've had a friend who's has multiple. She just tripped down a curb in Australia. She was visiting her son and broke multiple bones in her legs and her ankles and her feet.
Right.
Um, and I'm sure it's because one, we're eating lots of wheat, which is leaching
Hmm.
calcium out of our bones, and we don't eat enough protein.
Right.
But yeah, there's lots of different things that the standard American diet or the standard Western diet or the whatever standard English diet, it doesn't matter, is just not set up to
It's not
make us
sufficient.
healthy.
Right. No, it's not. And then, on in a broad brush view, if you look at the standard American diet, which is pretty much all over the world now, it's we know that it's not healthy in terms of our insulin. We know that it's not healthy in terms of autoimmune diseases, but we're not thinking about the bone and the importance of how the SAD diet, standard American diet, how it is so sad, very sad diet connects to broken bones, for example. And where if you break the bone, for example, my mother, that was actually my eye opener first. She was very strong. She even exercised. She used to play table tennis all the time into her late 70s. And then she one day, and what happened was is that they said she's old, she needs to be put on these bone increasing medications, right? It was like an automatic prescription. And she started taking it, I think Fosamax or something, but generic. And so she started taking it, and within 2 weeks, she just got up from bed and stepped down, and her ankle collapsed. And there was no recovery from that. That was a very sad story, but there was no need for that. She actually had pretty good bones. So then the treatment, so we also should talk about that the treatment doesn't encourage you to go and eat protein. It encourages you to get on these medications,
Yeah.
which forever make your bone too weak to sustain yourself, and they force you to be on it for life. So this is again another pharmaceutical that has no meaning behind it, just money making.
Yeah. So how does someone decide how much protein to eat, but based on their age, gender, health? How would somebody go about doing that? And
So
then
I
my
have a
oh god, I'll
that
ask my
so
other question. I'll ask my other question later. Don't worry. Do that.
oh, okay. So I actually have, I should have opened it, and I don't know where it is at right now. I have a document. It's basically a picture. It's a graph that shows the maximum amount of urea. Urea is a byproduct that protein metabolism creates in the blood, and they all have basically a maximum level that the kidneys can excrete when assume the kidneys are healthy and assume the person is healthy, and that's based on weight. And so I use that table. It tells you the average and the maximum. And so I go by the average. So an average person, for example, I am 5'3", just like you are, and I'm 150 pounds or so up and down, depending upon the season. And I will eat, I think my maximum is like 250 grams a day, and my average is like 200 or 220 a day. So I go by that table. I will send you that table so you can then share it in the groups. That is in my Facebook group, and everybody in my group goes by that. That was in one academic article that was not encouraging anybody to eat protein. It was not a protein pushing article. That's why I picked it, because it just simply measured the level of the urea tolerance by the person by age and by weight, or gender and weight. That was by gender and weight. And so I use that because your ability to eat protein should not be constrained by anything other than your physical ability to metabolize that protein. And so you should max out, or at least eat what is your average amount based on that, but don't eat less. And so it's not easy to eat that much protein, actually. It's quite difficult. So what we do is we train the women up in my group. So everybody comes in and they can eat maybe 50 to 80 grams of protein a day. But that's about what you should be eating per meal. And if you eat 3 times a day, it should be 3 times in each meal. You should have that much. So it's a ton of food, because for most people, protein digestion is something new. We're just simply not used to it. We're used to the plants, which are indigestible, but our stomachs are grinding and churning in the wrong way when we start this. And so what we do is we have you eat as much protein in meat and eggs and cheese and dairy, animal products as you can. And then whatever extra protein you need, add a protein powder, add a shake, or create one of these carnivore muffins or carnivore pancakes or carnivore whatever, which is purely made out of protein powder with whey protein or casein protein or milk protein powder, or buy protein powder from beef or whatever you like. And collagen is different. So that is not a complete protein. So we're talking about complete protein. And so then you can just amend your diet to sort of make up for the right amount of protein that your body needs. And let me just address collagen for a second, because so many people like collagen and drink or eat collagen. And collagen lacks an essential amino acid. It lacks tryptophan. It has just traces of tryptophan in it. And you cannot start protein synthesis unless you have all essential amino acids in the protein you eat. So you can eat collagen night and day, and there will be zero protein synthesis. It's not sufficient.
Can people add collagen in as well as the protein?
Right, they can. And in fact, I just approved it for my group as well, because latest research shows, for example, that collagen can help with the GLP-1 receptors in the intestines and the colon. So there you go. So there's some benefit. So if there is some benefit that doesn't exist by eating protein, then of course you can add the collagen, but add it as a dessert, or or as a supplement. It's not food. You don't count on it as a nutritional value. Count on it as an enhancement of your food.
Okay. So you said there was all different protein powders that you mentioned. Does somebody have to check the leucine amount in the protein powder?
Well, you should. Yeah, you should, because if it is a plant protein powder, for example, and the plant protein powder comes to you, say, at 3 grams of leucine, I'm just giving a number, and an animal protein powder comes to you at 3 grams of leucine, you would think they're sufficient and equal, right? Because each has 3 grams of leucine, but it isn't correct. And so you definitely want to check it, and you need to know that if you're eating plant protein in any shape or form, you need to double the amount of protein that you eat, because the amino acids are not bioavailable. They're connected to certain chemicals that prevent their absorption. In terms of the plant protein powder, if it is completely hydrolyzed, and if you look at everything, it is incomplete, right? Proteins, plants never have, the only plant that has complete amino acid profile is soy. But if you eat soy, and I'm not talking about soy powder now, but you're eating soy itself, you're eating a truckload of chemicals that will block your thyroid and also load you up with estrogen. So if you're a male and you're eating a lot of soy, you're going to have the man boobs, which is quite well understood. So you have to make some choices of which way you go. But the plant way to go is much harder, because you have to eat a lot more protein. It's about twice that much, because depending upon the plant type, some have only 30 to 40% bioavailability of the amino acid. Some go up to 70%, but on average, they will be about 50%. So that means you need to double how much you eat to get what you need. And it's impossible to eat that much plant. And now I don't know, again, in the plant protein hydrolyzed isolate, I don't know if those have any of these chemicals, the plant chemicals, still present to cause any of these differences between plant and animal. That I can't tell you, because I haven't had a chance to even ask the question yet to look for it anywhere. But personally, I suspect that there are some differences. There must be some differences. I just don't yet know the answer for that.
Yeah. And what about the difference between a whey protein isolate and a beef protein? Have you found any difference in those?
Well, in terms of the isolate being in animal products, since it comes without any kind of anti-nutrients, the isolates themselves will be identical. But the question will be is that the level of different kind of amino acids, so the mix of the protein itself will be different. So you will have more of some amino acids in the beef isolate versus the whey protein, because the whey protein is just part and it's coming from the dairy part. It's not the actual meat. So there will be some differences in terms of the various different amino acids of how much is in there. One thing that I've noticed in whey protein or casein protein powder or milk protein powder, which is the combination of the two, is that they tend to be too low in glycine. So there is an ideal balance between glycine and methionine. It's the two amino acids that work together to actually work with your homocysteine in your blood and to clear it. And so if you're out of balance, then you may build up a higher amount of homocysteine than you should. And so it can cause some trouble. And so you want to have your glycine twice as high as the methionine. So for those of us in the group who don't take collagen, for example, but we eat a lot of whey protein powder or we casein protein powder or the milk, like in my case, it's nearly always milk protein powder, then I have to add glycine to it to make it more appropriate for proper protein synthesis. In beef, I haven't looked yet because I don't eat beef protein powder on its own. It doesn't appeal. I have it, just didn't appeal to me. It was not white. It was just sort of kind of brownish in color and didn't smell like something I would want to eat. So I haven't tried it, but I've seen recipes and people, and I know that they like it and it's good. I just haven't tried this, haven't looked into it. But so these would be the two to look at, the glycine and methionine. Now, if you add collagen peptides to your diet, collagen is very high in glycine. It's like 10 times as much as methionine. So it's a good complement actually to having a whey protein powder or any other kind of protein powder, because it sort of controls for the missing part
Yeah.
of what's in there.
So can you mix the collagen and the protein powder together, or would you
Yeah.
have, you don't have to have it separately.
You don't know. And actually, I was thinking about that because I am very strong on eating whey protein powder. I love it. And so I add it to a lot of things. And I'm not carnivore this time. I sort of kind of cycle in and out based on mood. And so I eat fruits. I don't eat vegetables, but I eat fruits. And one of my favorite things to do is to have a protein powder, which is a brand that I cherish, that is unflavored and unsweetened. And I mixed in 100% ground unsweetened chocolate that I grind freshly from the baking chocolate. And it's not grind into powder. It's not like a cocoa powder, but it's like little tiny bit of shaving chunky.
Hmm.
So you can actually bite on a piece of chocolate and taste really good. And I add allulose. That's the latest sweetener that I allowed for my whole group. And I add allulose and mix it in. And my granddaughter and I, oh my God, we just get a fruit and dip and bite, dip and bite, dip and bite.
So
And
do
you're
you
getting
do
your,
you melt the chocolate?
no,
No, you
no,
just
you dip it
just
and it's with the fruit, you wet it and it becomes wet and you dip into it. And this wonderful whey protein powder mixed with allulose and the chocolate sticks to it. And there it goes. And I balance out with glycine. I add glycine too to balance it out. It's fantastic. And you get a lot of protein that way. I can eat about 40 grams of protein with 4 or 5 strawberries. It's
yeah,
just like keep on dipping and dipping and dipping. And I just ate my huge size of steak equivalent in whey protein powder.
yeah, excellent.
So
And
absolutely.
glycine's quite sweet as well, isn't it?
Oh, it's, I tested that and it leaves a bitter aftertaste for me. I'm a super taster, so I tend to be extremely sensitized to bitter. So I can't even go near like a broccoli or what is it called? The little thing is a little mini cabbage that is
The
very, very bitter.
Brussels
Brussels
sprouts.
sprouts, yeah, I can't go near them. But I can also taste the bitter aftertaste after glycine. I suspect most people wouldn't taste it, but I do. So it's
Yeah.
not good as sweetener, but I suppose you can if you just want a mellow sweet taste, but I don't know if it's going to give you a bitter aftertaste even when you add it to something. I don't know.
Yeah. So we've established that you're going to need a lot more protein. So for you is around 200 to
Right.
220.
I eat about 200 a day, right?
And you said to me, 261 to 285.
Right, that's the maximum. That would be the maximum. So you
And
would have
well,
other.
you said, and your maximum 325 to
Oh,
35.
okay, no, then that would okay. So then you want to eat more, but see, you weigh more, and so
Yeah.
it goes by your weight, and it looks at provided that you have healthy kidneys, and that's something you might want to check. And so what you look for is the estimated glomerular filtration rate, the EGFR. You want that to be high, and if it's high enough, not too high, but high enough, then it can excrete all the uric acid. So like I don't ever have issues with buildup of uric acid, but some people who, for example, get gout couldn't do that much protein because of that reason.
Yeah. And so, and then you said anybody that isn't used to eating. So I quite often will easily eat 120 grams of protein a day. Um, so you said that there needs to be a minimum amount per meal, and you said you
Right,
eat 2 meals a day.
right.
So how do you decide how much you need per meal?
So that's a very tricky question, and that's highly individual. Okay, it's an excellent question. And so I go by how I feel, but I also run a test. And for those people who could run that test themselves, it would be a good thing. And I can show you how to do it, and you could probably also apply it in your group. In my group, I apply it, and of course, it's voluntary, but most people end up doing it. It is a 5-hour postprandial test. It's called the Kraft in situ test, which I think you and I talked about in our first podcast. Kraft was a doctor, so Dr. Kraft, who created the blood glucose and insulin test with an oral glucose tolerance test. So you would go to a lab and they give you 75 gram. I think he used 100 gram. I forget. Glucose solution is basically water with sugar in it and some color, whatever that is. And you drink it up, and they take your blood glucose and insulin before you drink it, then immediately after you drink it, and then every hour for 5 hours. So that's a typical Kraft postprandial test. I am not a medical doctor. I'm just a PhD, so I don't have the same qualifications, but I can request through the patient to go to the doctors and to request a test, and I can specify how I want it done. And usually it gets refused, but sometimes it's accepted, and sometimes it is something that the patient, the migrainer, can actually do out of pocket. It's not cheap, but if they can afford it. And then I run a approximate test to this in my group. And so the approximate proxy test to this in my group is not giving anybody glucose to drink. I think that that's too much of a trouble. They just eat what they normally eat, but they tell me what they ate. So I have the macros, the micros, the precise, everything is weighed by gram, and it goes through the USDA database to get how much protein, how much sodium, how much, all the nutrients in there. So I have all the information. And then they take, as they wake up, a fasted test, and they measure the blood glucose and blood ketones. Okay, because we all have ketones, whether we're in ketosis or not, we still have ketones, and the ketones are going to vary with our nutrients. And so they take it fasted. Then they can go back to sleep. I don't care. But then before meal, whenever they wake up and they have their meal, right before the meal, which is after preparation of the breakfast, they take again the same blood glucose, blood ketones. And then 30 minutes after that is the first postprandial reading for blood glucose, blood ketones. And for every half an hour for 5 hours, they don't eat, they can drink water, they can't have any salt. Salt modifies the glucose in your blood, so that they can't have, but they can have water. For 5 hours postprandial, every half an hour, blood glucose and blood ketones. And I look at the graph. And that graph tells me so many things. First of all, it tells me whether they had sugar crash or not, whether their blood glucose went too high from the food that they ate or too little, or what happened. But it also shows me if they had protein synthesis or not. And so I look for this part, the protein synthesis, because they may eat 3 grams of leucine a meal, but if their blood glucose is up and down, like a roller coaster, there is no protein synthesis there. So protein synthesis means is that your blood glucose is strictly between about 85 in milligram per deciliter, so about 85 to about 95. If you go out of this above or below, there's a chance that you're going to be kicked out of protein synthesis. And so usually most people show there's a sudden spike that is conversion of the excess amino acids into glucose that is no longer synthesized. So I can see a sudden spike. So I know, okay, protein synthesis stopped. Blood glucose went over 95 or over 100. No more protein synthesis. Or if you don't catch that one, then we catch the insulin response, which takes them below 85 or 82 is the lowest I look at. So if they go into the very low 80s or below 80, absolutely no more protein synthesis. So I'm looking to see if they synthesize. And if they haven't, then I will recommend that they eat more protein. So you can sort of kind of guess what the synthesis of a person is. And this is a fasted meal. So you can really truly understand whether that person is or isn't. And what I see is that over time, many of these members in my group keep on repeating this test. Like some repeat it every month, some repeat it once 6 months or so. They keep on repeating it and I evaluate it. And when I'm evaluating, I can see whether they improve.
Yeah.
And they improve. I have not seen anybody who got suddenly worse. I only see people who improve. And so the healthier the metabolic system is, the more likely that they're going to start protein synthesis. And the longer they have the protein synthesis, I can estimate that they are the healthiest. So it's a very good system. And I call it the Kraft in situ mimic test. So I'm mimicking.
I like that better than drinking glucose. So for the people in the UK, that's 4.7 millimoles to 5.3. The 85
like
to 95.
So divided by 18, right?
Yeah.
Divided by 18 and you get it. And so the trick is that to understand that if your blood glucose goes to about 80 or 82, which would be about 4.4, is that the 80, 82?
80,
something like that.
so 81 is 4.5 and 83 is
okay.
4.6.
So 81. So let's go 4.5. So if you go to 4.5 or 80, 81, at that point, the only reason, provided that you eat at least once a week, okay, the only way your glucose can go below 80 is by insulin activity, nothing else. So you can't say that it's from something else, that you didn't eat breakfast or whatever. That doesn't happen. So the human body is set to be able to fast for days. I mean, I fasted, the longest fast I had was 5 days because of COVID. And I don't like to fast that long because of protein synthesis stops. Then I can lose my muscle and heart muscle and whatever else. So I don't want to fast too much. But people, the longest fasting person was actually in the UK, and it was like 385 days or something.
Yeah, a long time, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so we can fast. And he didn't have sugar crashes at all. You don't have to have sugar crashes. You only get sugar crash or have your blood glucose go below 80 is exclusively if your insulin is high. That's it. So you can very much control and see, you can understand what you're seeing, knowing the law of physics and physiology with our body, that if the glycogen had to, or if you had an insulin, a sugar crash, as a result, or your blood glucose went below 80 as a result of show of insulin release, then you're not synthesizing protein anymore because something interfered. It stopped it. So while you're synthesizing, you don't see insulin and glucose change. They're working together. Protein synthesis is insulin dependent. So you have a lot of insulin that you're working with, but it isn't going to take your blood sugar. That's not its role. The blood sugar role only comes in when your blood glucose suddenly went high. And it will go high when your protein synthesis stopped and you have excess amino acids that you couldn't synthesize, and that turns into glucose. Then your blood glucose is going to increase and the insulin increase, and then you're going to see a drop. So it's a fascinating process that you can clearly see when you're taking this test every 30 minutes. You can often, and today people wear the continuous glucose monitors where they get it every 3 or 5 minutes. You can see clearly what's happening. This is exactly what's happening.
Yeah. So one of the things that you mentioned to me in the emails was that in the beginning, people might put on weight.
Yeah, yeah.
So can you talk about that?
Yes. Okay. So this is very counterintuitive. So you have to really just listen to me to understand it. Because even the biggest of scientists, they fight me and they don't understand it and they just simply don't get it. But so our body is basically everything that we can do, yes, brain, heart, everything. But the most important part of you is your thyroid. So your thyroid is that dictates how fast you will burn your food or how slow you will burn the food. And this is referred to as the metabolic speed. Okay. So your thyroid will control your metabolic speed. Um, and that's not about how fast you digest your food. It's about how your body is going to utilize what you just ate. And so a slow metabolic speed means that whatever you eat, your thyroid will say, you're not going to use it, it goes into storage. So cases where people, for example, I'm sure you have all seen very obese individuals eating only like a salad a day, right?
Yeah.
Many of the people who eat very little food are often very obese. And people blame them for eating too much, blah, blah, blah. That's not true. They may be starving themselves.
Yeah.
But what happens is the thyroid says, okay, that's it. You're in a really bad place. Whatever you eat, I'm going to store. And you can't have the energy to work it off. You can't do anything. It's going to be piled on as weight. By contrast, if you're an athlete and you're physically strong and fit, you can eat a cow a day and you still will be losing weight, right? And it's not dependent upon how much you exercise, because while exercise itself uses energy, the different kind of exercises use different kind of energy. And I weight lift and I'm not losing weight. It has nothing to do with that. And I'm not talking about just little weights. I'm talking about heavy weights, right? Hundreds of pounds that I lift. And it's not necessarily a weight losing thing to work out, but it can be a metabolic speed accelerator.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that if you are not exercising and you're eating only a salad, your salad is going to be stored as fat. If you're eating 2,000 calories and you're exercising, all those calories, provided there's protein in them, will go toward your protein, toward your muscles and your skin cells. And you're actually going to gain weight from that, but you will shrink your fat tissue because you're using the fat as energy. Nobody uses protein as energy. Our body uses fat as energy primarily, except for our red blood cells and our brain. Our brain uses ketones and glucose, and the red blood cells only glucose. The rest of our body uses fat. So you can just eat fat, and nothing else, and you'll be fine. Okay, your brain might have some troubles, but you're going to be fine. So when we're talking about eating protein, so whatever health situation you now have, okay, and you think you're feeling fine, maybe, or maybe you think you're sick, maybe you think you're totally fine, you start eating protein. And I find that people who feel very, very healthy and are fit, whether they exercise or they don't is a different story, but they just simply are fit, they're going to start losing weight from eating only a carnivore diet of just pure amino acids and protein with fat. Okay. People who have been thin all their lives, but they may have some health conditions, or they aren't exercising, they aren't fit, but they may be perfectly fit. They may be models, right? And we had some models in the group and some actors and actresses. They may start gaining weight like crazy from the exact same food that they've same calories as what they had before, but eating only meat. So it isn't the calories that matters, but it's what you eat. So if you eat, say, a 2,000 calorie diet a day from lettuces and green leaves and, a vegan diet, for example, without consideration for protein, you just eat plants, okay, which many people do.
Yeah.
Versus a person who will eat a 2,000 calorie of animal products only. The person who is eating the animal products has a much better chance of losing weight on that 2,000 calorie. And the person who is eating the 2,000 calorie of plant-based food will have a much greater chance of gaining weight.
Yeah.
Because the nutrient contents are different. So the thyroid's going to say, well, this vegetable stuff it's not nutritious enough. So whatever, fine, I'm going to store it because I need more. Won't let you work it off either. But in the amino acid, the high protein diet is going to say, okay, I have not excess. So let's get rid of the excess. And so then you're going to lose weight. And so what I find is that most people, when they start the carnivore diet, at first, and I'm talking about carnivore, I'm not talking about just increasing protein, but carnivore diet where everything you eat is animal. So most people at first will start gaining weight. Most people, not all, but most, because they're nutritionally deprived when they get into the carnivore diet. And as the body catches up with the nutrients, then they stabilize at one point. And then without any warning, bang, the weight just drops. And most of my carnivores in my migraine group are struggling to try to increase weight because they feel that they're too thin, even though the body just goes to its ideal norm. But in our modern style, everybody just thinks that that's too thin. And so they tend to say, no, 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 I want to gain weight. I want to be fatter. And they want to try to put on weight and they can't. Some of them eat 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day, women, not even exercising, not even going for a walk. And they can't put weight on. So it has nothing to do with calories. It has everything to do with what you eat and the health of your body.
Yeah.
So if you gain weight from what you eat, then you're either eating the wrong thing or you're not healthy.
Right. So, I mean, most of us here tonight on the group are mostly carnivore, I would say. Maybe keto. Steph's probably more low carb than keto.
Right.
So would you expect us to put on weight as well, or maybe not?
Well, it depends when you started, and depends how healthy your body is.
Yeah.
So if you're very, very, you can be healthy and not actually be healthy. So how many people are out there who think they're completely healthy, and then when they quit whatever they're eating and they move to carnivore, they discover, wow, I used to have this and it's gone. I used to have that and it's gone. They consider that to be part of a healthy life, right? But it's not actually healthy. So you don't know how healthy you are until you're actually healthy.
Yeah. And then the other thing was how much, so let's go back to you said ideal 261 to 285 grams of protein. How much fat? Are we still looking at 2 to 1 or what?
Well, it depends. It depends. You don't want to go too low on fat. So it depends on your health and it depends on your metabolic health primarily. So I find that if people go too fast into a higher fat and lower in protein diet, they tend to get sugar crashes. But again, I work with migraineurs. So if you're not a migraineur, this may or may not apply because I have a few people in my group who are not migraineurs and they seem to be similar, but I can't average from that. It's not enough. But there's enough difference between migraineurs and non-migraineurs that I suspect maybe this is also different. So I think your best chance is to experiment on yourself and see what it works best for you. It's really easy to try because if you put in front of you a slice of steak and it has very low fat in it, you won't have a desire to eat it. And so you want to go for the level of desire, but you don't want to add excess excess fat, because fat is a fuel. It does have some roles in becoming part of our cells, but primarily it is a fuel. So when you eat a lot of fuel, then you tend to retain it. Your thyroid is going to retain it for future use. And so then you're going to start gaining fat, not weight necessarily. You may not get heavier, but you may get fatter. So you want to look to see your energy, you want to see how it tastes to you. Like I like to eat, for example, steak when I don't eat any side dish or whatever. I like to eat it with butter or sour cream, something that's fatty, because it just adds a little bit to it. It's not fatty enough for me, but it's totally up to the person of how they enjoy it. And I think that we have smart bodies. I mean, our body will tell us, what's good for us. So we don't have to control everything. We can just control some of the basics, that you're not going to eat a bowl of rice or a bowl of beans or whatever else. But you can have your body sort of kind of tell you how much extra, like if you crave that butter on that steak or sour cream or whatever else, just pop it on and eat it.
Yeah. And then the other thing I was curious is, and there might not be an answer to this, and it might be, it depends, is if somebody is gaining weight, because the way they've changed their diet, is there a time period where you would then expect them to start reducing the weight after that?
You got some very good questions. I think you and I talked before. Yeah, there, yes and no. So I find that most people expect the change within a couple of weeks. And I would say that for most people who come in healthy and are not coming in from the standard American diet, but coming in from low carb, high fat, or keto or something, or even some who come in from a very well managed vegetarian diet, they will recover within a few weeks.
Okay.
But I have members in my migraine group who take over 2 years.
To get healthy, their body
Right. And
needs.
so, and until then, we can't even make changes in the fat and protein ratios because they will get a sugar crash. I mean, clearly they aren't healthy. Their response isn't fully there yet. And how fast their thyroid is going to respond is also unknown. Many people who join the group are on thyroid medications. I mean, it's amazing how many women are on thyroid medication. Nearly all women have hypothyroidism. Why is that? I mean, it's ridiculous. But the thyroid is the one that controls how fast you burn your food. And so the thyroid has to heal first. And that on its own can take a couple of months or more too. Like Hashimoto's. I mean, we had reversals in the group on carnivore from Hashimoto's, but it takes time.
Yeah.
All the cells that are sick. And that's the other thing is that, we think of healing as a simple thing. I mean, eating right. So I would expect to be healthy within 2 to 3 weeks because I'm eating so good. And then bang, you're hit with a heart attack. We have some people like that in the group. I said, no, just think back. We started this conversation with cellular replacement, right? The protein synthesis and how our cells replace. Some of the cells replace, it takes a year or more to replace, right? Even our skin or our red blood cells take 3 to 4 months to replace.
Yeah.
And so you have unhealthy thyroid, you have unhealthy red blood cells. It will take 3 to 4 months for one replacement to take place, but nothing in my vocabulary tells me that the first replacement is going to be purely with healthy cells.
Yeah.
It may not be, right? Because the semi-unhealthy cells are reproducing into making two red blood cells. Anywhere in your body, more red blood cells coming from semi-unhealthy cells. So why would we expect that our red blood cells, bang, just like that, in 3 months, the next set is going to be healthy? It may take 2 years for it to recover. So we have to consider how long the cellular turnover takes and how fast the cell itself heals, that its turnover, as it's slowly recovering, will finally reach a state where everything in that cell is healthy. So when that cell is being replaced, it's a permanent, perfectly healthy cell is going to come in place. We can't tell that. So it can go on for years.
Great. So I'm going to stop there. Is anyone on the call? Do you have any questions that you want to ask Angela on the podcast before we finish up the podcast and then you can chat with Angela after? Anyone got any questions? You can just raise your hand or something. No? And Nicola, I can't see you, but okay. So I'm going to finish off the podcast and then we'll just unmute. Everyone can talk to you. So, Angela, is there anything else that I haven't thought to ask you that maybe you think I should have asked you?
Well, I think that the only thing that we may not have delved into deep with, and I don't know how much you want to, given that everybody is a carnivore in your group, is the difference between the plants and animal. And I don't know if that's relevant to you at all. Do you have any carnivores who are eating plant protein only and nothing else?
Not in the group, but there will be listeners, I guess, that are vegetarian. I would say
Yes, I think
vegetarian more than vegan. I'm sure there are.
right. Well, it depends. So I know that we consider carnivore as a plant-based, I mean, animal-based everything. But there are those who are eating vegan and focus very well-tailored vegan. I mean, you can have a well-tailored, whether that's totally optimal for the person or not is another question, but you can have a very well-tailored vegan diet that is focused more on protein than on anything else.
Hmm.
And the only important thing here is for them to understand is that I often hear that, well, I now ate a lot of flax seeds, so I got my omega-3 for the day. And I think this is a very important point when you look at your nutrients, particularly even in a carnivore context, because a lot of people don't think about it. I mean, we think that eating beef, you're getting omega-3s, and we do, but not perhaps enough for everyone, okay? And so when people come to me from the plant-based community and say, well, I just got my omega-3s and I'm fine, I said, no, you are not fine. They said, well, I just need omega-3. I said, no, you don't need omega-3. You need very specifically DHA. And I'm not going to spell that out or what that is because it's a very ugly word, or EPA. So the way omega-3s work, and just so that you understand the difference. So we have an essential requirement for omega-3 fatty acids because we can't make them.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that we need a ton of it. We just need a little bit, about 3 grams worth or so of this particular fatty acid. The caveat here is that we need to take this fatty acid, the omega-3, and our body has to convert it into EPA, and then from there to DHA. So the conversion process, whether you're animal or plant, it doesn't matter. If you have to convert it from omega-3, the conversion process to EPA is approximately 20% efficiency. The conversion from EPA to DHA is less than 1% efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think you ate the right amount of omega-3 to have your DHA, and let me explain what DHA is used for, your brain. Now I'm a neuroscientist, and so I had a brain on my hand, and I know what it feels like and what it is. But think of if you ever go and to the store and buy a very fatty gelatinous meat, say a hoof or a snout of a pork or something, and you remove the meat from it and you just have that oily, greasy, sort of kind of gelatinous substance, that's the brain, okay? And so what is our brain made of? It is made up of 85% cholesterol that the brain makes itself, and 65% cholesterol, but 35% is DHA, okay? And so we can't make DHA in our brain. The DHA has to cross blood-brain barrier, which it does. DHA is used in the brain by the neurons to, for example, at the end of the neurons, as the neurons communicate and the neurotransmitters are released, it is DHA that actually assists in this particular neurotransmission. So without DHA, you can't function. You're brain dead. So your brain requires DHA. When you ate omega-3, if you have a 20% conversion from omega-3 to EPA, and from there a 1% conversion to DHA, then that means you have a 1% conversion to DHA from omega-3, right?
Yeah.
You need to have 900 milligram minimum a day in your brain. So that means you need to eat 9,000 milligram omega-3 oils minimum a day to get that much DHA. The problem is there's not enough hours in a day to do that. So if you're counting on just having your omega-3, be it a vegetarian or an animal-based eater, you are actually cheating your brain. So you need to have the proper DHA, the right amount. And so I recommend, outside of whether you're eating carnivore or whatever way you're eating, supplement your DHA. And supplement a high DHA where you take 2 caplets and you have enough DHA, you met your 900 milligram a day, and you're not counting on your omega-3s eating from the plants or the animals to convert it for the proper amount of DHA. And so for the plant-based eaters, if they don't eat an animal-based omega-3 or DHA with DHA in it, they are starving their brain. They're not going to get enough. So they may get all the protein, they may get everything else. There's no way they will get the right amount of DHA to keep healthy brain.
So as a carnivore, eating mostly, let's say mostly beef, maybe a little bit of chicken, pork, lamb, would we be getting enough DHA?
Well, not really. And so here it comes to what kind of meat can you afford? So if you can afford meat that is of the highest quality from regenerative farms and mostly beef, then you may be getting enough DHA. And if you're eating a lot of fish, fatty fish, that sardines and other kind of things, like every day a can of sardine, if you eat a can of sardine in that has the skin and the bones and everything in it, you're fine. Then you don't need to supplement it. But if you don't do that, you're not fine.
Yeah.
Even on a carnivore diet, you're not getting enough. So in my group, I recommend everybody to take it. I take it. I take it twice a day. I take it morning and at night. And I find out it's like a sleeping pill for me at night, interestingly. It works really good because it allows smooth brain function. And so you can relax and you get great sleep.
And do we have to be careful around how old the supplement is in
Yes.
terms of how oxidized it is? And
You're so good at asking the right questions. Yes. Excuse me. It is very important. So what I do, first of all, any kind of a PUFA, polyunsaturated fatty acid. And so anything other than saturated is going to be either PUFA or MUFA, the monounsaturated or PUFA poly. So if it's not saturated fat, you have to sniff it every week. There's no exception. And you need to have a migrainer. And if you have a migraine in the family, have them sniff it. Like my nose is amazing. And I can tell. So what I do with the DHA, I have a high DHA capsule. It's DHA EPA that two of them give me 1,000 milligram a day. And when I get it, it's in a caplet. It's not in a liquid form, because if it's in a liquid form, every time you open it, you give it a chance of oxygen and it's going to oxidize it. It's going to make it rancid. So you don't ever want any of these oils in a bottle. That's already wrong. Then you get the caplet, but the caplet has to be in a bottle that is either dark or it is a milk color, so you don't actually see the caplets in it. If you see the caplets in it, oxygen, light, forget it. It's already bad. So you have to get a very dark or very milky, completely in, non-transparent bottle with the caplets. And then take a caplet when you buy you buy a batch of, say, 200 pills. I like to buy them in big ones, so I have a lot in stock, 250, and get a needle or a very sharp toothpick and puncture and sniff. It should be very fishy, but not stale smelling. And you know what a stale oil is.
yeah,
If you
yeah.
don't, then buy a bottle of oil from the store, remove the cap and leave it out for a week and then smell it. If it smells like that, trash it. And I take one caplet every 2 weeks, because you have to keep on opening it to take a caplet out of it. And light is known to cause some damage as well. So I will take a caplet every single 2 weeks and puncture and sniff to make sure. And if it reaches a point where I sniff one, that is bad, I take another one, sniff that one is bad, trash the bottle and get a new one. I never had to trash a bottle yet, so I've been careful. But I had once, before I knew all these, there was one kind that was, in a bag to get rid of all kinds of other vitamins, and that I always had to trash. That was bad. So you have to make sure that both light and oxygen are excluded from your package.
Yeah. And keep it in a dark, cool
Keep
cabinet.
it in the dark and cold, and test it time to time to make sure
Yeah.
it's not rancid.
So when you say caplet, they're the gelatin capsules with
Right.
the oil inside.
Well, it's not even a gelatin. It's not a capsule. The capsule you can pull apart.
Yeah,
These
but
are
like
like, those are called caplets. So
yeah,
that's the thing. So it's
but
like
it's got the oil inside
it's got the oil. So it has,
rather
and that's the
than
other thing. It has to be in oil. So I've seen powder forms. That's really bad. You want it in an oil form. And it
great.
has to smell really fishy. I mean, it has to literally be from the fish. Now I have a trick, and I don't know if it's something that you can do, but both my husband and I, excuse me, love. Um, it's a canned. It's not a sardine. It's cod liver. It's the actual liver of the cod, prepared. And you would think that, ooh, but actually, it's my favorite food, and my husband likes it too. So it's not just me being weird,
Yeah,
because you could say. And I absolutely adore it. And so if you eat that, you get a lot of your nutrients from that as well. Now, it's not something necessarily that you want to eat every day, but you can have it once a week. And that will also supply you the D3, the A, and all the other stuff in addition to your DHA.
yeah.
And so once or twice a week, you can sort of kind of replace that and eat something else.
Excellent. Anything else we haven't covered?
I can't think of, oh, water and salt. And you know why? It's because many members of the carnivore community refuse to add salt to their meat, and some even don't drink water. And because they believe in some sort of ancestral something or other, where they say, well, ancestral speaking, we didn't have salt to add to water or to salt our meat, so why should we now? But this is very important, because if you look at meat today, what do we do with meat before it hits the market? We hang them. So they hang the meat for, I don't know, 10, 14 days, right? The purpose of the hanging is twofold. One is to clear the thyroid, everything out of it. But the second is to clear all blood. And if you look at where is the salt in our body, it's in our blood. It's not in the cells. So we literally drain the salt out of the meat before we eat it. But in ancestral times, you killed your, whatever game you had. And what was the first thing you did? You ate the blood. I mean, to this day, you look at the Maasai who still eat to some degree traditionally. What do? They bleed their cows, right? They literally cut it open. They don't kill the cow. They just take a few cups of blood and they put it back in so it heals, and they drink the blood. And that is their salt. So there you go. So you have a lot of salt. And how much salt do we have in the blood? In 1 cup of blood, we have enough salt. And I take salt capsules. I'm going to show you in capsules for what it is. We have, depending upon the person, we can have, I don't know if you can see, there you go. It's 4 caplets of pure capsules of pure salt. And each capsule is about 750 to 800 milligram salt. And so 4 of these, 3 to 4, is what's in our blood per cup. So that's a ton of salt, okay? And so even if you look at like a lion or anything, they kill an animal, they keep on licking it. And you can see always they keep on licking and licking. They lick before they chew. They kill the animal, cut it open, and they lick. And they lick for hours. It's because the blood is coming out and they're licking up all the salt. And there are other animals who don't hunt as often as a tiger or lion does, like apes, monkeys. They will go to salt areas and they will eat salt mud. Birds will eat salt mud. All the herbivorous animals, elephant, everything, they will dig down to salt and eat the salt mud. So, and also, if you look at water, prior to humans being able to filter water, all water on the planet Earth has a little, it's all brackish. They all have salt in them, because where is salt coming from? Salt is coming from volcanoes. And so every single rock, every single mountain, every single piece of sand contains salt, because they're all made from the same element, right? And so the only place where you can get water without salt is if you go up north or south and you look at the meltwater that is from the snow that has fallen. That is your only source of pure unsalted water. But it gets to be salted by the time it gets into the creeks and washes down. Those creeks all have rocks, right? It's surrounded by rocks and soil and sand. Those are all salty.
Yeah.
If you took out a rock out of your backyard and you licked it, or you broke it up so that it's an area where it hasn't been touched yet, it's going to be salty.
Yeah. So
yeah,
people need a lot more salt than they think they do.
They need a lot more salt than they need than they think that they do. And the caveat is that most of our salt is not in our cells. And water. And thank you for reminding me. So most of our salt is not in our cells, but it's in the blood. So the best way to take the salt is not salting your food heavily, but adding salt to water. And so here we come to the water too, that many people say, well, we don't need water because there's plenty of water in the meat. Yes, try to take it out of there. How are you going to take the water out of the meat? So there's no logic in the argument. Like even a glass of milk. How about a glass of orange juice? How are you going to separate the water from the orange juice? You can't. You have to evaporate the thing. Our body doesn't have a heat, a flame to evaporate it, right? And then you have to collect it in a cold environment that is the vapor is going to become water again, and then you have water. Our body doesn't do that. So we need to drink water. It's not enough to have the water in the food, because the water in the food is not going to be used as water that our cardiovascular circulation will use. It will be the water that's going into our cells. But again, the water in our body is not in our cells, it's in our blood. And so we need to replenish it. And the problem is that we also urinate, right? Because you have to urinate the toxins out. So we lose a lot of water with the urination. And our kidneys, so if you drink, for example, I drink only salt water. I don't drink water without salt ever. I don't recall the last time I had water without salt, period. And so I'm drinking salt water. But the moment I drink it, my kidneys immediately purify my water, my blood, to bring it back to osmolality. Proper osmolality is the amount of the level of sodium and potassium and magnesium and calcium and everything else in the blood. But most important is sodium and potassium and the amount of water. So my kidney within 12 minutes filtered all my 5 liters of blood. I have 4 to 6 liters of blood, depending on my size and weight and other factors. Within 12 minutes, within 10, 12 minutes, my blood is completely new. And so I can't oversalt with water, but I can oversalt with food, because that goes through the intestines into my cells where they shouldn't have too much salt. So people who are affected by high blood pressure, for example, from eating salt, they're eating the salt the wrong way. They should be putting it in water instead of the food. So it's very important to drink a lot of water too in this way. So go ahead.
So you showed me your salt capsules that you had. I haven't got any here at the moment. So when you say you have the salt water, are you putting the salt actually in the water? Because I don't like salty water, but
Right.
I can
So,
take the capsules.
yeah, I take the capsule because I actually vomit from salt water. So salt is an emetic. And so if you have children or grandchildren, if they eat something they shouldn't, you can give them salt, they're going to vomit. That's just how it is used medicinally. So not everybody has that reflex so strong, but I do too. And obviously you don't like the taste. I don't know the taste because I would used to take the salt on my tongue and swallow it, but I would vomit it back up. So it was impossible. So I take it by capsule. And actually, this is a company that my son, I don't know if you can see the Health by Principle. What happened was I was vomiting salt all the time. I said, I can't do this. I need to have the salt. And I tried also salt pills, which is not capsule, but an actual pill. And that too, I vomited up. It was just an open salt hitting me just really badly. I wouldn't be able to do it. So then I said, okay, I'm going to go to a lab and I'm going to order my salt in capsules, because I started to make it at home and I didn't vomit from that. I said, okay, but it's ridiculous. I mean, it takes me 2 days to make 1 day's worth of salt capsules for me. So that just didn't make any sense. So I said, okay, I'm going to order from a lab. I researched it and you can go to a lab that creates supplements and medicines and ask them, you have to pay for it. And it's a large amount. I said, I was committed at that point. And salt doesn't go bad. It doesn't have an expiration date. So it's fine. I'm going to order. And it was a pallet, which was like $10,000 or something. I said, I don't care. I'm going to buy it. Fine. I'm just going to have it for life, but I need to have it in capsules. And that's what my son said. My older son said, no, I'm going to buy it for your birthday. Fine. So he bought it for my birthday and he said, I'm going to store it, because he has a company, an IT company. He said, I'm going to store it for you. And then you don't have the pallet in your garage. I said, perfect, because my garage is full with cars, right? So he's in his 40s and his own family far away. So this company, I said, perfect. And just bring me the salt per case and as I need. And so he said, it's a lot of salt. What if you sold this, but you don't use? I said, okay, but just to the migraineurs. So this is how the company started. So I'm not not financially connected in any shape and form, because all I want is my salt, and everything else I designed, the magnesium, and I designed a B1 right now, which is the best one in the market so far. It seems it's amazing. And I have one more. Oh, D3. So I designed a D3, which is actual fish oil and fish gel cap and whatever else. So it was just really cool stuff. And so we started selling to my migraine group only, and we all got the discount. So he didn't make money per se on it. He got like 30% discount on the salt and the magnesium. And then he said, well, can I also sell it on Amazon? So then we created a label and he started selling. And so now he's a big company selling supplements.
Excellent.
And so it's very, very good. Mine has per capsule, it has 300 milligrams sodium. So in the US, we go by sodium rather than salt. So 360 milligrams is about 800 milligram salt. And it has 20 milligram potassium, which I decided to put into it instead of other additives, because they have to have some additive to fill the capsule? I said, nope. So I said, potassium it is. So we use potassium as an additive. And I take 2 capsules per cup of water, and I drink 11 cups a day. So that's 22 caps just in, that's like 18,000 or 22 caps. So I'm taking 11 cups a day. So it's like taking 18 or 19,000 milligrams salt a day.
Wow.
And my kidneys improved to be absolutely perfect.
Wonderful. So
And
how can
increase in blood pressure. Sorry, I had to say that.
yeah. So how can people follow you, contact you, all those
Okay,
things?
so they can just Google my name, Angela Stanton PhD. I'm all over the place, all the interviews. I have a migraine group, which is on Facebook, migraine sufferers. So they go facebook.com/groups/migraine sufferers, one word. I am on LinkedIn, on X. At X, my handle is @migraine book. It's pretty simple, as everything is migraine. And my email is angela@migraine-book.com. I can be also contacted by email. And I have a nonprofit, which is at stantonmigraineprotocol.org, and a website, organized website, stantonmigraineprotocol.com. And what the .org does is I work with a lot of medical professionals. So we teach them for migraine handling, and then also we accept donations. And what I do is migraineurs often lose their jobs because they're disabled. And so when they join the group, they can't afford to buy the book, and they can't afford to buy the blood glucose and ketone testing kit. Then the nonprofit buys these for them.
Lovely. Perfect. We normally ask for your 3 top tips, but I know you've been on before. Well, I don't know. Do you want to do your 3 top tips?
We can do. Let's see what kind of a tip. Well, we talked about the biggest tip to me, I think, is to drink enough water. So we didn't actually talk about how much water, but it goes by weight and gender. So we have a male member and then and some female members here. So a female member, female body has less water and more fat. So we calculate how much water you need by multiplying your weight in pound by 0.55. So you take 55% of your weight and you divide that by 8, is 8 cents for the 8 ounces per cup of water. And you find out what your minimum water is. And for men, it's 70 to 75% of water, depending upon how cut they are. The more cut you are, the less water you have in you. So the more cut, the less cut, you will have more water in you. And so you want to take 70 or 75% of your body and body weight in pounds and divide it by 8. And that would be your minimum water that you need to drink a day. And everybody gets surprised at just how much that is, because everybody's told just to drink 8 cups, you're going to be fine. But no, that's not true. So I am a little bit of a woman at 5'3", and I need 11. So you may need much more than you drink. So this is tip number 1. Tip number 2, you're already on your healthy avenue, eating carnivore, mostly carnivore. I think that my tip number 2 is that you have to pay attention to your body, whether the carnivore diet is really, truly optimized for you. And I'm not turning you down away from carnivore, but I have found some people who genetically aren't appropriately ready for eating pure carnivore. There is such a genetic profile. And so go by how you feel. If the carnivore doesn't feel 100% for you, that's okay. You don't need to be a carnivore. Just eat a very high protein, low carb, high fat. Okay. And that may be it of what is bad for you. So don't hold to the thing because that is what they say is healthy. It may not be healthy for everybody. It's good for most people, but I have met a few for whom some, even as a birth impairment, that they can't simply just use protein. Right. So there could be some issues. So if you find some issue, have a doctor check you. And if you're fine, fine. But if not, change to add a little bit of the carbohydrates, but of course not bad carbs. I'm talking about just, a little leafy greens and some low carb fruits. And the third is a ketogenic. We haven't had much talk about it, but there is such a huge ride on the ketogenic diet. But ketosis is a catabolic process, not an anabolic one. Protein synthesis is an anabolic process. So if you're in ketosis, you can't be synthesizing protein. So you have to make sure that there is such a thing as carnivore, keto carnivore. Like one of my programs is keto carnivore. But at least 1 meal of the day, you need to snap out of ketosis to be able to do protein synthesis and to develop some healthy cells as opposed to just destroying bad cells. Ketosis will destroy a lot of bad cells, but it's not going to replace it with good, healthy new cells if you're not eating enough protein to get into an anabolic state. So these would be my 3 points that we haven't discussed that are important.
Lovely. Angela, thank you so much. We're now going to go offline and let our members chat with you. So thank you for joining us today.
Sure. Thank you.
Disclaimer. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Our guests, whether healthcare professionals or not, are sharing their personal opinions and experiences. This does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before making changes to your medications, treatment, or lifestyle, particularly if you're on medication or have concerns about your health.